Welcome to the AWP University, a construction industry institute, registered education provider.
All right, hello everyone. Hello and welcome to the AWP University webinar series. Very pleased today to have Dr. Ted Blackmon with us. He's going to take us through AWP Mastery, Unlocking Secrets and Boosting Capital Project Returns. When you get into AWP, lots of people start with the basics, go through the basic implementations and the systems. However, they leave a lot on the cutting room floor for what can really be brought in to drive true AWP mastery, if you will, and give you the proper ROI. Dr. Blackmon's going to take us through some of those things today, as well as some tips, tricks, and several other things. So pretty pleased to have him here. All right, so let's get started. As we get into this, let me introduce myself. My name is Robin Mickelson. I am the president of the AWP University. You've probably heard my voice many times on our modules if you're a present or past student, or have attended many of the conferences that I've spoke at. Very pleased to be here today, and this series has been very well received in the industry, and we're pretty proud of it. Now, if you wish to get in contact with me or have any questions about our curriculum or our offerings, please scan that LinkedIn scan code that's on my profile screen here right now, and feel free to make contact with me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to make your acquaintance there. All right, so we are going to use a tool called Slido today. Many of you that have, I'm sure, been to conferences or have had exposure in the conference room to Slido are going to be very aware. But let's go through a quick drill with it. So scan that QR code with your mobile device or on your desktop computer, go to slido.com. Your code is number AWPU, number 4. Put that in, it'll take you into ask questions as well as fill out some of our surveys and questions that we're going to be asking throughout our presentation here today. So with that in mind, let's do a quick little go-to where we're going to get an idea of who's with us here today. So feel free to scan that code, go to your mobile device, and help us understand who it is that's with us today. And it looks like we've got a few consultants, some vendors, EPC companies. It's great. Thank you all. Continue to fill those out, and I'm going to now advance to our next area. This is a good cross section of people that we've got here today. Okay, let me keep that poll alive for you. Okay, all right. Now today, as I mentioned, I'm very happy to have Mr. Ted Blackmon with us, Dr. Ted Blackmon. He's going to be presenting for us here today. Mr. Blackmon and I have been friends for a very long time. I would call Mr. Blackmon a long-time mentor of mine, long-time friend, long-time colleague. As my career myself has advanced over the last 30 years within AWP and construction, Ted always seems to have been there to help guide me and assist in the ventures, as well as we've worked together for many years. So very happy to have him here to present for us today. And with that, Mr. Blackmon, I will turn over the presenter to you so that you can join us and take us away with your presentation, sir.
All right, thank you, Robin. Let's see if my screen's sharing.
I can see your screen now, Ted.
Outstanding.
Did you want to bring up your webcam?
Yes, let me try that as well. Okay, right. Here I am.
Excellent. All right, Ted, it's all yours, bud.
All right, glad to be part of the event, and really looking forward to some of the questions at the end. So I think the question period comes to the end, and we'll make this a bit of an interactive conversation. Always a fountain of information. Gonna get some good learning in this session with AWPU. It's what it's all about, sharing the knowledge and getting the good information into the right people at the right time. And AWP is starting to take off in the industry, so that's exciting. I won't spend too much time on my background, but AWP's been the bulk of my career. I've transitioned from working at NASA, where I'll share a slide on that, but basically was the journey of owners wanting to know what can we do with these 3D models and how can we better leverage engineering data into construction and plant operations. But before we do that, let's get a safety moment in. I think it's good. It was one of the key things that kind of drew me into the industry was, how can we apply the technology to help safety? But most of us, many of our colleagues, are now working at home. It's one of the things that happened through COVID. This is a link. I'm not going to play the video during the session, but I'd suggest you reach out. I'll hit some of the highlight points that I learned, and some of them just make sense, but I'm going to bring one up that I'm going to add to it. So, one was just clutter, right? I mean, as you're working around, you may have trip hazards, especially if you've got animals, pets, children, or like me, and just sometimes, forget to clean up and keeping your desk and the space clear around you of hazards that you might slip and trip on. Ergonomics, getting a good seat. You're working at a table. Do you have a good chair? Is the monitor in a good position? So thinking about ergonomics, taking breaks frequently enough, looking away and not constantly working at the computer. Those are some of the more obvious ones. I saw a LinkedIn post and I reposted it. Not sure if anybody caught it, but I'm going to add one in. And I tell you, these working at home has a lot of advantages, but it seems like we're now living in Teams meetings or Zoom or WebEx, whatever system, and sometimes you got to jump from one to the other. But having back-to-back meetings without having breaks in between, it really seems to increased in frequency over the past 2 years. I think we really got to reconsider some of the scheduling habits as we come away from office work to home work, and we're spending more time in online sessions. How do you get breaks, and then turning it so not everything's a meeting, but you could actually effectively have working session online and have some good interim breaks in between there. So be sure to take breaks and see if you can schedule things always not back to back. Advice for the day, but keeping your home office clean, keeping yourself, everybody healthy and safe, important thing. So how did we end up here? I had a very exciting period during the mid-90s on developing a virtual command and control system, part of the team at NASA, entered into a NASA technology commercialization effort as part of the Mars Pathfinder mission. And as we brought the technology out, part of it was reality capture. How do you scan and make 3D models from images, which was the more recent uptick in compute power and AI. It's becoming just capability that's now more readily available than it was 26 years ago. We were doing this. It was certainly capability. It's not new capability. It's just the compute power has gotten so much better. Being able to automatically detect objects in the environment also existed that long ago. It led to the advent of two, not products, but platforms, ConstructSim and OpSim. That was really the launch pad of what eventually became known as advanced work packaging. I take pride in putting the label and installation work package into a computer system. Took a lot of time explaining what's an IWP. Most people didn't have a clue. We were just learning about it. And the Construction Owner Association of Alberta and CII, that's also something I'm pretty proud of. Robin spent so much time getting good documentation. He was part of those early pioneering journeys with some parallel work that was going on in Canada. And there was a meeting where we had Al Wallstrom and Sean Pellegrino, Al from Suncor and Sean from Chevron. And we said, hey, CII documenting something and COA documenting something simultaneously. Let's bring the efforts together, at least in North America. And that was what really led to the RT272. So been a bit of this journey. I really like looking back at this picture. Believe it or not, this software still runs on my laptop. And so I was able to give a educational outreach event where we had some third graders who had to design their own rover for Mars, and being able to have them navigate the simulator through a Zoom call was a lot of fun. I just did that a few months ago with Bob Schlesinger's daughter, who's a teacher. And that was really fun. I love getting the cards from the kids. You know, educational outreach has been a big part of my career as well. But being able to have these embedded virtual models, this is a view of the Sojourner looking at the rock yogi, and you can see, you know, the 3D model was made from this camera, the imager from Mars Pathfinder on the lander, and we could simulate and basically build packages that we would upload. And we had to say, well, if you get stuck doing this, what about that? And that's really where, you know, I'm going to get to that a little bit later, where the industry is leading to, being able to build these what if scenarios and being able to do that rapidly because the plans are changing. And that's the dilemma in construction, is you build a plan, but the plans have to iterate and change, because that's the one thing that is constant, is change. And you know, in the manufacturing environment, your plans can be more stable, where they still may be disrupted and you have to match supply to demand. But here in construction, in the world of getting things done, your plans and the conditions are changing dynamically. I want to, you know, take a break there just to emphasize, you know, myself in terms of my positioning. I've launched work packs, launched a number of other companies, was the original developer of ConstructSim, and you know, I've entered into a mode of my career where within Jovian Venture, it's really a venture studio where we're building and crossing sustainability, which was part of the passion I came into, is, well, how can we use these smart models? And over 20 years ago, with the venture community, it was, you know, kind of, I don't want to say laughed at, but almost saying, oh, that sounds like a nonprofit. Well, it's here, it's for real. You know, so there were some visionaries. I wasn't the only person. I was more inspired by other visionaries who saw that, like, how can we actually make our environment, you know, closer to what is demanded, which ultimately becomes a circular economy. And so doing startups in the area of, you know, enabling a circular economy is going to take us to pretty much rebuild everything we've built and tweak it and tune it. So, you know, there's heightened degrees of things coming from one going into another. So we'll get into that. What are we going to talk about today? You know, over this 25-year career journey, I'm going to share some fundamental lessons. It's not all about the good. It's also about talking about the bad and the ugly. I'm also going to talk about, you know, the game-changing approach to AWP. What's been the evolution? We're going to dive in, and I'll give you some what I consider key elements to success. And then I'm going to bring up something that I think is what I've seen as a dangerous trend since the publication of the CII material. Is fantastic, but I think there's also been some massive misunderstandings that unfortunately, you know, perhaps set us back, but it's also just part of us learning as a community, learning together. So I'm going to be a little bit controversial at points in this talk, and really look forward to comments and discussion that don't just take everything I say at faith, might question it. But I tell you, I've been there living it. This hasn't been something that's been done by sitting in an office. It's been done by getting out on projects and working on projects. I love to be part of great projects. I think that's a lot of people in the industry are. So I'm going to walk you through, you know, how I see the evolution of AWP. There was really the 2001 through 2012, and until 2008 and 9, 10, there really wasn't a word called advanced work packaging, but we were doing installation packaging, and the idea of planning and iterative constraint management and eliminating constraints, because it's not just about the packaging, it's about eliminating constraints before that work's going to the field. That was a key thing that we introduced into the industry. Again, Robin's been a big part of that uplift. Then it suddenly had so much success, it was like, well, can we define this so others can replicate it? So I've called the period between 2012 to 2020 kind of AWP generation 2.0. And, you know, being a little selfish, also say it's the period of the copycats. I mean, what we saw was, and that existed at both a technology and also at an organizational level. It's kind of funny, before owners started insisting, in fact, putting into contract specifications that thou shalt do work phase planning, thou shalt build this visual model showing progress against plans, there was a mountain of resistance, particularly from engineering. It put a lot of spotlight on engineering delays, and with project controls, it shifted the sand. It was kind of a who moved my cheese. This isn't the way we do project controls traditionally. So after a decade of resistance where it was construction adopting it, then we came and said, well, what do we need? What data does construction need to make this reliable? It suddenly became firms saying, oh yeah, I've been doing this. I do this. And, you know, I do AWP. And it was, you know, it's not a I'm doing it or not. It's not a yes or no. It's a fundamental misunderstanding to begin with. I'm also, you know, I'll called out as a copycat on some of the software. You know, the technologies that were developed with ConstructSim between the 2000 to 2008 period, part of the challenge was there was no other tool like that. And a number of the users developed tools themselves as they were users of ConstructSim, and they eventually became some commercial tools that spun out that more or less, and at times there was a better mousetrap. So maybe it's now a web version, but more or less replicating functionality, but also beginning to look beyond the installation packaging into the broader soup to nuts of all the different package definition types. But we really have now fully entered into AWP Generation 3.0. And as we've gone beyond just the simple we're building packages, it's really about AI-infused AWP. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But before we get back into the AWP generation and the exciting journey that the industry's taking with AWP adoption, AWP going global has become a real thing, and it's now been promoted, or let's say become a part of the Project Management Institute training modules with AWPU, getting accessibility to students across the globe. It's great to build a global community. And we again many times focus on what goes well, what doesn't go well. Rather than talking about it in general, maybe give a few examples. The basic fundamental principle of AWP again is that a schedule, it's one of the key principles. There's a couple, but one of the main key principles is the plan doesn't survive the first battle with the enemy. That's an adage that comes from the military. I can't remember the general from Germany or China that maybe it first quoted that, but there's certain classes of problems. Construction is not a wicked problem, and that's a technical term. It's solvable. Great teams, and even teams that struggle, solve the construction dilemma and get things built, engineered and built all the time, but it's a highly dynamic problem. Conditions are changing. And so the plan is not stable, but yet I need a schedule, and to make a schedule, and by the way, scheduling was one of the first software packages ever developed for construction. Construction actually is an incredibly innovative field. It just takes a long time for processes to adopt and become things that then just are done all the time on projects. So scheduling requires a fixed plan. What happens if your plan's constantly changing? Well, you can build a plan at one level, which is our construction work packages, which might be an entire contract. I mean, I hate to say it, but this idea that a CWP has to be a single discipline, a construction work package, go look it up in Google, it's a construction contract. But breaking those work packages down into discipline parts systematically was part of the technique. And so labeling CWPs, and then CWP doesn't have one level, there's multiple hierarchies of CWPs. But you build a schedule, and it doesn't have to be by CWP, but your CWPs are going to generally align with about the same level as your master project schedule. As you get down below that, trying to put things into a schedule, particularly a scheduling tool that does critical path methodology, makes no sense at that point, because your plan needs to be agile, needs to be able to change. If I'm changing my plan, which I want to be able to do, I want to send work to the field that's executable. That's the key point. We shouldn't be putting IWPs into a P6 schedule. I've seen projects do it. It creates a mountain of grunt work in trying to maintain that schedule. Scheduling of IWPs, a look ahead schedule, okay, maybe I'm building a 3 to 8 week, really extending that schedule out, but scheduling IWPs is a standard practice. And again, coming back, this isn't, I build a perfect plan up front, and that's exactly what I'm going to execute. So we've seen projects, some of the other examples of where things don't go so well is this idea again that, well, I'm going to front load all my plans, and then engineering and procurement can just operate according to that. Engineering and procurement has different dynamics. They aren't done in the same sequence that construction's done. So thinking we're going to have it dictated over is also just a fundamental philosophical mistake that has been misunderstood by a number of those in the industry, including members of the lean community, who somehow said this doesn't work. Well, it was a basic misunderstanding. And this is not just front loading. It comes down to iterative planning, dynamically planning, and using a computer model, which was another one. It was interesting, up until 2008, trying to build an IWP manually is where I started 25 years ago. good luck with that. And then somehow the industry post the 2008 economic downturn came back out. I remember certain owners, I'm not going to name the names, that said, we're going to just do this manually. And it was like, excuse me? It's like almost a joke, thinking you're going to build IWPs. Sure, you can. And the statistics in terms of the number of people, but then maintaining those plans as revisions occur and changes start to happen, it falls apart. You really need automation to support. Otherwise, you're doing what I'll call unadvanced work packaging. But overall, the resistance of just change is difficult in the industry. And so, the people side of it has to be really brought to the surface and addressed. We're going to talk about that as one of the key elements of success. There's been, what's kind of interesting is that some of those projects, like the scheduling example, and there's more than one that did it, they still got good results on the project where at the end it was like, well, we didn't achieve exactly as good as we thought we were going to do, but it was good enough. Don't stop them from doing it. That was a response from a project manager. At least they're planning at a detailed level. It was tough to get them to do it. So many times we'd see a non-perfect implementation still produce decent results, which highly correlates to the research results that then CII did in terms of getting AWP as a best practice, is that even if you implement some of it and don't do it all well, you're still seeing benefits accrue. So the more you do, the more benefits you get. Again, AWP is not an all or nothing. You really got to pick your battles wisely in terms of where to apply the technique based upon, it's not stop doing the way you're doing work today and then suddenly adopt AWP. Advanced work packaging as a practice is advancing work packaging. Somehow the ING got dropped. Don't want to get into my own opinion of how that happened. It was advancing work packaging, meaning making it better than the way you're doing it on the past project, a continual improvement into the way we're building. But you've got to start from where the capability of your stakeholders that come together on a project are. You can't just have them throw away, they know how to do it. You've got to augment and build upon what they're doing well and take it to the next level. And that's a key part of it. It's not advanced just in terms of the time frame. And one of the key clarifications is AWP is an umbrella over the entire methodology, not the front part, and then work-based planning is at the back. That is a critical misunderstanding. It's also a critical misunderstanding where you say, well, I'm an owner, or I'm a prime contractor EPC. That's what my subcontractor does. Boy, is that a misunderstanding. AWP was developed as an owner-driven initiative to get visibility on where we at. So as an owner team and a project management team with the prime contractor, we can come in and work with the contractors in a lot of the constraints. If you do a constraint analysis, most of them end up in the lap of the EPC coordinating across the trades. You don't build IWPs for a single discipline, which if you read some of the literature, you might believe, well, I'm planning just a discipline alone. No, you're planning an IWP sequence across the trades within the local area to identify my interdiscipline dependencies as those key constraints that are both in the field and constraints that need to be removed before, and what needs to be interfaces and sequences of trade dependent handoffs that happen in the field. Really critical to understand that work-based planning is not meant to be something just that your subcontractor does. It's meant to give visibility of where they're needing help from management, so management can do their job of getting the right things to the right people at the right time to enable them to do the work. It's kind of a simple idea, but boy, does it really get confused when a lot of the industry began to say, oh, this is something that the contractor does, not what the owner does. It's applying that visibility. So as we're transitioning to turnover, and there's no magic 60% frame, but it's about 60% where you transition typically on a project from area-driven bulk construction to needing to start getting my systems turned over. That's a process that the computer can help project teams incredibly well to get visibility on installation status by systems, so I can start to prioritize where I need to put some effort into installation so I can get my systems ready for testing. And this is some of those key concepts got lost along the way, but introducing AWP 3.0, trying to teach all of that to everyone in the industry, good luck with that one. But boy, we could embed it into the computer systems and build an AI system that utilizes generative techniques to apply these principles to the path of construction and commissioning and start automating some of those predictive analytical, what is going to cause the project to be stuck or where the current project is stuck, and automating the development of a path of construction that's human guided. It doesn't take the human out of the loop, but it doesn't expect that the human's going to somehow just, even if they have a conceptual understanding of those basic principles, absolutely know how to go in and program the computer to do it all. The computer can do so much. It's an exciting era of industry. The generative techniques of structure applied into the path of construction to automate the path of construction and commissioning, which got lost along the way. It just started becoming the path of construction. Commissioning needs to be a key part of that path. Again, through the computer being able to analyze and understand the relationship at a tag level between the tags that are in the areas and the tags that are in the systems, it can start to align multiple iterations of here's a potential path and build those iterative schedules like we were doing at NASA for the Mars Pathfinder mission, where a planning tool produced multiple branches of a schedule that can then be maintained as what-if scenarios for the project. It's really an exciting journey. It's a game-changing approach to AWP, properly, fully leveraging the technology so that then the organizations don't all have to become and empower their workforces to become AWP system experts. There's going to be a few AWP system experts within an organization, but it's empowering an entire project team to adopt it. And that's a key part. So, what are the essential elements for success? We kind of talked about some of the things that were misunderstandings of what went wrong. The team is critical. Now, there are AWP toolkits that you can buy into. You could build your own. You can leverage one and then adapt it. It's got to be adapted. Getting the right information into contracts. It shouldn't be overly prescriptive. In the data specs, it's all about the data. Then ultimately, setting the project up for success and making sure you have the right tools. But coming back and closing out on the people, we need to clarify the role of engineering. It's going to be one of the major points I'm making today. I'm not going to go through each of these items, but your AWP toolkit should incorporate elements that can be reusable and adapted. If you have a procedure that just says this is the way we do AWP and we apply it on all projects, it goes back to like, really? That each project has got a variability. You don't just have it's not a procedure somewhere where I'm doing a procedure saying I'm building packages. It's almost a joke. You need to have something where you can adapt it to the specifics of the project in terms of how AWP techniques and of new techniques that can be advancing the way I'm doing it are brought in to add value. And again, toolkits are a key element of having that ability to rapidly deploy and get repeatability across projects. I want to speak about contracts for a minute. We're going to also talk about data, but whether it's prescribing work processes and or data requirements, which are a key part. The contracts don't have to be, so thou shalt do it exactly this way, or thou shalt provide this data in this format exactly this way. The contracts need to specify engagement that we will share the data. And here's the type of data that will be shared. And then as the project is actually in its implementation phase, the teams can determine based upon what tools we have and what's being used, here's the type of data I need to make sure that then it's considered to be, it's a budgeting issue, to make sure that there's budgeting. And there's also in contractual requirements, budgeting for dedicated teams. Not only, it doesn't work without dedicated planners. There's a first principle. If you take, you take concepts of production planning, fantastic, approaches, but you take your supervisor and put them in front of a computer. What are they not doing? They're not supervising the crews. But yet you need that supervisor level development of plans. So doing it in parallel and having a team that actually does the planning for the people in the field, it's a natural conclusion that you come to if you actually try to do it, because otherwise it was the first earliest implementations of some of the lean methodologies was, safety issues of taking planners. Your last planner should be in the field, not in front of a computer screen. which goes back as AI is coming in, less and less is needing to be done, but it will still always have those planners. So a dedicated team of planners need to be put into the budget and need to be specified that, we're going to be applying teams to build the plans using computers for those in the field that are doing the work, so that the field workers aren't scrambling for the drawings and the material list. Now, the other part is around data. We've fantastic movement forward with our AWP digital threads. I'm so proud that the techniques of the information, took a journey from 2014 until 2000 to really get good documentation built with some leading owner operators of what information is contained in the engineering, procurement, and construction management systems that are already in place in the industry, where that information just needs to be pulled out. But again, it's not saying here's the exact field that's needed. It's about make sure on the project that there's scope in the budget that you're going to share that data. And yes, here's an example format, but it's not about saying this is the exact format. It's about making sure the budgets exist and the teams. It comes back to the teams. That there's going to be people that have ownership in getting that data correct, because there will be data gaps, guaranteed. Data is dirty in this industry, and it just goes to the nature of a construction project. There's a few where you're building many of them, but those are not the norm. The norm is a bit of a snowflake. But even if it wasn't, it just goes back to, you're building something one time. The information doesn't have to be perfect, because I'm not manufacturing it thousands and thousands of times. And it's also complex. The number of IT systems used, industry capital projects has 33 different application categories that we document. And again, as the contract information comes in, the intent wasn't to be prescriptive to say, here's the exact standard, but here's the type of information that as a stakeholder, you should be able to consume, or more appropriately, in most of the cases, provide. Meaning I've got this type of information and getting it out of, AWP didn't mean put a PDF document called an EWP together and put an EWP label on it and make engineering jump through hoops. So I'm going to get to that. And so, toolkits, really going to wave the flag here. We've got some fantastic digital toolkits where, those digital toolkits tie into the data specifications, tie into the integrations, tie into who needs to do what on a project, because many times that's what it comes down to, is you're trying to educate everyone on what AWP is. Yes, you need to have an understanding that it's important. Here's the general concept. They need to take some classes through AWPU. But overall, you're not going to have your piping engineer become a world expert at AWP. They're going to need to know, what do I need to do? Okay, this is what I do now, and that's where AWP works really well. It layers incremental capability on what top of people are already doing. And sometimes it's a little more work, but it shouldn't be a lot. And so that's, for me, the biggest element of success that I'm going to hit on is, what's the role of engineering? This idea that we're having engineering jump through hoops to put attributes into models is almost silly. It's the models, the 3D models, by and large, are used to crank out piping isometrics. Now, this one BIM model in the sky idea that you see on LinkedIn, it's a fantasy. But that integrated model can be made as a virtual construction model through AI, bolstering and taking data from the engineering tool. But I went to an AWP conference. I've been going to them pretty much each year since they started. They weren't called AWP conferences at first. There were sessions that COA was running, and then AWP started to become a community. Was CII combined with COA and produced the first seminal RT272. But even well before that, but I remember back in 2019 being at a conference and seeing an EPC company say, it's 2 for 10. And the 2 for 10 came up with, well, if you have 2% more put into planning, where you need to front load some of the planning and have planners stay with the construction team throughout. In reality, somebody's planning it in the field one way or the other. It's not adding 2% of the cost, it's shifting. In fact, you're saving money because you're planning it in a better, stable environment. But that's about the budget, to get your planning team, your dedicated planning team in place and empower them with tools. But it suddenly became, well, engineering needs 2% to put all these attributes in the model. No, the model has areas. The model has service codes. The model is broken down according to an engineering work breakdown structure And the computer is really good at remapping that. In fact, then construction can iteratively plan and change the packages. And that information can come back in engineering and drive priorities. And so, you really get into, your toolkit should really, I'm not going to, dive you into all of the toolkit. These are some pieces coming out of it would pop up and say, what is project management's role? This dedicated team of AWP and work-phase planners, what are they doing? And then what is engineering doing? And what engineering shouldn't be doing is spending a lot of time putting attributes into a model that just causes engineering costs to go up. That's not needed, but that's where much of the industry is. It needs course corrected. Option A is let's require engineering to put all these attributes into a model and load it up with other data sets. It was the first thing I learned coming out of NASA. Some really advanced engineers, I won't say the name again, they were trying to do some of this, and that's what they learned was like trying to have engineering put it all into the model is a losing proposition. Engineering budgets trail off. The data needs to be maintained into construction and commissioning. You can use automation as we did 20 years ago to get the spool information in, to get the CWP information in without that being put in by engineering into a 3D model. Seeing budgets for engineering to support AWP, it should be lowering the cost of engineering. It did 20 years ago. Why are we suddenly saying engineering needs budget to put data in? I mean, is that just because we want to make more money on engineering? I hate to think that's the reason, or is it just a common misunderstanding that we landed upon? You can automatically update the engineering data sets from detailed construction and scoping and sequencing done in the right AWP tools. Under option A, we increase the cost of engineering. Is that what we want? We increase delays to issue the drawings. Now I'm putting attribution on and bundling them into PDFs that say, here's my EWP. Never issued EWPs. That wasn't a need for a benefit. It is a prioritization. We'll get to that. It doesn't mean engineering is not doing anything. And that also makes it rigid. If I want to change my plan, I've got to go ask engineering to change my plan. That's not what we want. We want automated linking of tag structures to schedule activities in CWPs. The schedules, project control should be able to build projects. Schedules are largely quantity driven because that's the way I'm estimating. It's not an exact sequence. And at that level 3, it forms a baseline plan that I can track against. My actual plan is going to iterate underneath it. That's what AWP allows you to do, is to have an iterative changing plan that still lines up with my overall schedule and automatically marry the two up and empower an iterative and agile planning environment and just eliminate this millions of dollars that engineering needs to somehow load attributes into a model. I just think that's, again, major course correction. But it is about aligning with construction and commissioning priorities. So communication of that information, where here's the first set of ISOs, focus more on getting these ones out the door as I'm coming into the rack. I don't need the utility pipes coming down immediately. I need the straight pipe first. And getting that clarified over to engineering can be both done just through simple communication. It can also be done through automation. We've got some brilliant examples of those that are truly taking AWP to the next level, that really understand this well. Much of the industry still does not yet understand this. I'm hoping that AWPU can solve that. I also think you need to look at having the right tool. Getting a tool that can support that level of integration of the data and building a virtual construction model where the data isn't expected to all be handed over on a silver platter just because owners are willing to get contract specifications of AWP in place. I don't remember many owners saying, can we increase the cost of engineering? That's not a request. We should just stop doing that. And so I'm very interested in opening up the floor to discussion on this topic. Not sure exactly how much more time we have left, but the time to the benefits on ROI is a game changer. As we now got 25 years in doing this and understanding what those data sets are. We've gone from AWP taking months or a year to set up and get all the data, to now you can start building packages within a day. Stand it up, get to it much more quickly. And through cloud provision solutions that leverage the artificial intelligence of the data processing combined with package automation techniques, the time to start accruing benefits become much more rapid. It is a new advent. It's a game-changing approach in AWP that's been primed and ready for industry adoption. Very excited to be part of this upswell that is happening across the industry, but it still requires us to properly communicate and educate the project teams on how to do AWP the right way. I believe very strongly, it was where as I came out of NASA from the artificial intelligence group at NASA that I worked at, it was like, okay, if we're going to apply AI into planning and scheduling, if you don't have a structure of the language of the plan, you're a little bit poking in the wind. So a big part of AWP through that early journey was getting the proper structuring of what does good look like. And now we can apply with compute power and the advances that have come, not just analytical aspects of seeing where the problems are, but being able to make multi-scenario, what-if scenarios going forward, and generative development of the path of construction all the way down to IWP generation and replication is absolutely where we are. It's difficult to find enough planners. It doesn't eliminate the planners, it supercharges them. But the number of people, if you take a manual approach, which again came part of the 2008 timeframe, it was kind of insanity to hear, well, we're just going to start building packages manually. But some projects have done that, and they've actually seen some success. I mean, at least they're doing the packaging and planning. But maintaining them as actual iterative plans, difficult. You begin to blend techniques from operational science around logistics. This is really an area where the combination of AWP with Lean has a very bright future. And you really need to apply that early investment in the budgeting of and not only going to apply AWP as a static technique. Again, this idea that, well, I'm doing AWP, I've already specified that in. Well, if you're doing it already and you're stuck on what you're doing, you certainly aren't advancing anymore. You're going back into an unadvanced work packaging where I'll just keep doing it the same way I did it, which goes back to, really? I mean, we're trying to make it better incrementally, but also bring in new techniques and do it stably, do it where we show value and apply that value in the cost differential where I could see the savings. Sometimes an investment's required that may take multiple projects, but most times the investment, the incremental, which then produces step changes in performance. And you get those step changes, but you should be able to see it into the project. So if you haven't started adopting AWP, now is a great time to do it. It's become so much easier in doing it again the right way, where we're not asking engineering, we're allowing engineering to engineer the way they know how to engineer, but we're aligning their priorities with the construction sequence and using automation to blend the two into communication of CWP priorities against engineering deliverables, and using automation to do that. That's the right way. So with that, I think I'll wrap up, and maybe if it's not already, Robin, end a little early and open up the floor to questions.
You're about perfect on your mark, Ted. As always, a professional presenter. And thank you so much for the passion. I love watching you present and watching how this all rolls out. So we are definitely going to take some questions because I'm sure everybody wants to speak with Mr. Blackmon, and you can do that, of course, through the app, the Slido app that we've put out there, so that you can see what's and ask different questions. I see many coming in. So Ted, don't go anywhere. You're not off the hook yet. We're going to get there. I'm just going to.
Yeah, I've got my next meeting lined up back to back. No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, no, we're going to make you do some overtime here, bud. All right. So you're seeing my screen just fine. The today's speaker is up for yourself. Yes. Okay.
I'm seeing it. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So that's good. So we continue on. So I'm sure everybody's wondering how to get a hold of Ted. He's like trying to grab a tiger by the tail, but once you do, you're going to go far. So with that, Ted is a pioneer in multiple different companies, Jovian Ventures being the parent, WorkPax is his latest passion, as well as ConstructX from the consultancy point of view. Please scan any of these QR codes. It'll take you to the website for any of Ted's ventures here, where I'm sure that'll help to get in contact with Ted as well. We're going to continue with a few more announcements here. Then we're going to come back into the questions so that y'all can get your questions heard by Ted. And I think we're going to do some overtime here because we got a lot of questions that have come in. So I hope you don't have a hard stop at the top of the hour, all of you. If you do, clear your schedules because Ted's going to take us through, I'm sure, past the end of the hour. So one thing we are extremely proud of at the AWP University is a lot of our community outreach. One of the things that we are launching right now, and actually as of tomorrow morning, the criteria will be active. For information, please go to our LinkedIn, and our LinkedIn will have the information for our scholarship program. The scholarship program is taking off huge. We are awarding 3 full ride scholarships. What's a full ride scholarship mean? It's full level 3, 54 hours of training. It's nearly a associate's degree level of training that you can get from the AWP University when you look at the amount of classroom time that we provide in these areas. And if you haven't figured it out already, with Ted being an ongoing mentor of myself, many of the concepts, many of the things he was talking about here today are prolific in all of the AWPU materials. With our scholarship program, we have the John Fish Award, Jay Moser Award, and we're also awarding a full scholarship for women in construction. With those, they all come with a mentorship by those individuals. So you'll have a phone number to call to help with your career if you're looking to move forward. Stay vigilant on looking for that. It's going to be a great program moving forward. Our next webinar, Ted was just mentioning, future of AWP. Where are we going with it? Well, AWP and Lean have been working together for quite some time to drive forward new methodologies, best of breed methodologies, how we can work best together. They are complementary tools. If you don't believe they're complementary tools, come and listen to these 2 gentlemen speak. Master in AWP, Fernando Espana, John Strickland, one of the main founders of LCI. So you've got King of AWP, King of Lean. They're going to do a great presentation together on how AWP works together. That's our next webinar. Scan that QR code or look at our LinkedIn for upcoming information on it. Now, let's get back to Ted because that's what you're all here for. So questions. Let's start looking at the questions. We're going to go to Q&A. And with that, let's look at some of these. So Mark Mehta has put a question out that I think is quite interesting, and I agree with the sentiment of asking the question. Per the poll, we do not have anyone here from engineering. Do you see this as an issue, Ted?
I do. I actually think that it kind of feels as if, I'll go back to the point I made, that we've got certain top tier engineers that have suddenly just said, hey, we're doing AWP, which again is a total misunderstanding of what the concept is, where we're doing it better, not just making attributes available for packaging and spending more money. So I think we're in a period where the fundamental relationship through construction to engineering needs to be redefined. I don't think that just has to rely upon CII to take that on its own. I think AWPU perhaps could get some really strong material out on what is the proper approach from an engineering to construction. What does engineering need to do? What do they not need to do? And then engage some engineers in needing to get certified in that, particularly as many times they influence how AWP is done on a project.
Understood. So let
me make one more quick point. It seemed like in some of the conferences, their attendance also dropped in the past years. Maybe it's COVID. Maybe they're too busy. A lot of work in the industry.
Yeah, I think what it comes down to myself is a lot of people really need to hear your presentations, Ted, around AWP and engineering requirements. Because I think, as you kind of mentioned in your presentation, for a long time now, a lot of AWP supposed practitioners have been tub thumping on the fact that engineering needs to restructure everything they do. Well, the truth is they don't need to restructure. There are certain deliverables and methods and timing that's required for AWP. But I think you do a really great presentation on what engineering is really responsible for in engineering And I think it would amaze people as to what's actually required versus what a lot of the status quo have been pushing for quite some time. Okay, let's take another look here. Can you clarify again what engineering does not need to do in terms of AWP? Funny question right on the tail of that, tied directly into it. Why don't you give us a few details on that and from your presentation as well?
It's pretty broad, but I'll go back to a very specific one. You
Okay.
know, requiring engineering to go in and spend extra engineering hours to put EWP and CWP attributes into a 3D model or on other engineering deliverables is a waste of time. It's not beneficial, and particularly, and we don't need EWPs issued as PDF packages. We need data. You know,
right.
The work breakdown structures that engineering have developed over since the advent of 3D tools works well to get engineering done. They could be made better. I mean, I'm not saying there's not engineering efficiencies that can be introduced, but nowhere was there suddenly a need to say engineering should be attributing. CWP is not an attribute. One tag falls into multiple CWPs. And it's something that should be, there's different hierarchies of CWPs, and the level we need for design areas is piping in a design area. It's already in, that's what the model does. So why are we artificially requiring engineers to put CWPs into the models? Is that because other tools require it? I don't know. Or is that because somehow, again, it was just miscommunicated? But I've seen that on multiple projects. It slows engineering down. They do it begrudgingly at the end of when they're ready to release, which isn't when you need to be planning priorities. So putting the key attributes for piping, which are spec material and the size, that's what the model is. They don't have to put the attributes in. It's a spec-driven system. Now, would I like to have better attributes on civil foundations? Yeah, that's an area that it doesn't take much effort and gets better tags on the foundation, so it's not just called blocked bigajigi. But even there, that can be, AI can line up the 2D and the 3D drawings. We've got it. Got to check us out. But again, there's certain things, but I think it's the requirement to say engineering should be putting CWP attributes into 3D models is a cost burden that doesn't add value. Creates a logjam.
I agree with you, and I think it's very key to understand that. I think a lot of that early concept came from very immature software tools that were viewer based, if you will, that you needed to see what was a CWP, and the only way to see that attribution was through engineering adding. We've moved beyond that. We've moved into a situation where we understand the abilities of the model, how we parse the model based on tags that already exist. To create those packages and those delineations along CWA and CWP. So I think that's a bit of old school thinking that's still hanging on in our industry today based on supporting old software. I think you nailed it on the head there, Ted. All right, so here's the $1 million question, pardon the pun, but how much does AWP cost? That's a pretty big variant. What would you say to that, Ted?
I'd say, how much does AWP save?
Excellent. That's exactly where I would have gone with that. How much does it cost? The truth is does it really cost anything? In the end, what does it cost to not effectively plan your project? That's probably a better way to answer that question. But there is an upfront cost, right?
And there are toolkits that give you a good estimate. But again, coming back, choosing the right tool, your planner count goes way down, right? You need to have a dedicated team for supporting the technology, and you need to have a dedicated team for using the planning tools. But again, it's in that case, it's not adding costs for the planners. You're just shifting from other people that would be doing it very poorly in the field. So it's actually, again, saving money. That cost is a cost savings, but it's just the way projects are historically estimated and budgeted. They view it as an indirect cost, and somehow it's inflating the project cost, which goes back to we've got to take how to estimate projects on AWP. Clearly needs some real work. I've got great techniques in our toolkit, know how to do it. It's tough to just give that information away, but it's certainly an area that CII, with some information sharing, properly budgeting and understanding the budgeting process for AWP doesn't happen without it being baked into the project.
Agreed. And it has to be understood. There's going to be some upfront cost for big time gain in the back end. You know, do you plan a project in the beginning of the project or after it's under execution? When you ask the question that way, it's pretty easy to understand versus, you know, increasing indirects. People get all tied up in that. Thanks, Ted. Can you use AWP on small jobs?
Absolutely. It's where WorkPax was born, right? Working with two major owners in the petrochem industry, both starting with the big E. You know, they asked, hey, we can't afford the dinosaur tools. I'll call them the Gen 1 tools, right? It was construction, one of the tools I invented. It just became a lot. And it wasn't just the cost of the software. It was like how much it took to set it up and service it. It was initially done on a small job, but AWP was built, you know, based on smaller jobs, not just the big ones. And then it became popular on the big ones. But, you know, with the right approach and light weighting it, absolutely, you can do AWP on jobs less than $1 million. And then you apply it to a whole capital program, you know, the cost, and it's not always about productivity at that point. In a running plant, it's often more about more efficient use of capital, making sure I can get the work done I want to get done through that year. You know, many times the productivity numbers are padded because the teams don't want to be browbeat on productivity. So they're not, you know, the owner's not getting enough done for what they want to get done that year. So it's not necessarily meeting productivity numbers as much as it is more efficiently using the capital when windows of opportunities exist to execute the work. And you're applying then the principles of AWP at a programmatic level in considering operational dynamics of, you know, can I have packages ready that is, if there's some downtime that was unexpected, I can get in there and get the work done. Queuing them up. There's some real techniques that have been proven out and documented through the ASI AWP conference, and reach out to me. I've got some good documentation on applying it on the small jobs. And again, it's a different approach. It's not you know, rubber stamping some, you know, here's my procedure and I'm just going to do it the same way.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree with you more, Ted. I think there's no more apt place to mention this as well, and that is that, you know, it's all about understanding the concepts of AWP rather than the harsh integrated processes in a procedure. If you've got one big procedure and you try to ram it down every size project's throat, you're going to have a problem. It's about understanding the philosophy, understanding the methodologies around it, and ensuring that you make that fit to suit for your projects. And what I mean by not a better time to mention this, as Ted knows, because Ted stood for me in my wedding as a groomsman, we work packaged the wedding. We had work packages for the entirety of our wedding. So, you know, live it. That's all I can say. We've been living it for many years. Amber, my wife, and I have been married for a long time. Everybody had a work package when we were married, including Ted. So it was
one of the best times of my life.
Yeah, there you go. So it happened. It's fully scalable. It's all about understanding the concepts is the key. All right. So where do you see the balance between the basics of how we do things, procedures and processes, and the tidal wave of technology?
Yeah, I think that's such an appropriate question, and it goes right to the heart of it. Is that, you know, if we think that the procedures we should lock down, we're basically giving up. We're saying, okay, we're just going to stagnate, which is where the industry ended up. Okay, we're going to proceduralize things so much, and now we're not changing anything. So of course I'm not getting any better. So I'm seeing a flat line. We need processes that incorporate, but you do have to. There is a balance, and so I think there's like, how much can I bring into this new project, because I can't absorb so much change. But every project should have a procedure for adoption of new technology. And in process and technology, it's not just like I pick the process and I choose the tool. It's like that's another major misunderstanding in the industry, that somehow I got to define the process first, then I'll pick a tool. It's like, no, your tools change the process. Duh. I mean, I was like, Human Dynamics 101 from the 1950s is technologies for aircraft and other things were being invented. You change the buttons that a pilot has to push. Of course, then he needs different procedures. But it's just like, that's that simple. The human and the machine are integral around process and tech. So we need processes to embed new technologies on projects that are just baked into the project. So we're advancing the way we're work packaging. It's actually not that hard once you just think of it in that new frame of light, but it is, because we can't absorb, and that's what I'm saying. You got to kind of build on where it is and take an incremental step and an incremental step, the process of somebody taking the incremental steps opens up the light of like, wow, I'm not stuck in just doing it the way my grandfather did it.
Exactly. Thank you, Ted. So just at this point, I want to acknowledge those that possibly have a hard stop. I thank you very much for being with us. We're not stopping here, but I just wanted to thank you for joining us if you've got a hard stop now. I've noticed that the attendance has not dropped off, Ted. You've got everybody on the edge of their seats, judging by the metrics here. So as we continue on, if you do have to go, thank you very much for coming. Those of you who want to continue this conversation, we're going to continue it. So here's a good question. I'm actually in the process of exposing my company's director or engineering to AWP and workplace planning. What do you recommend to help with this introduction?
Two things. Number one, AWPU is put out, and if I'm not mistaken, it's just like free of cost, Robin, right? The executive level introduction to AWP is there.
Mm-hmm.
Outstanding, and it's been upgraded with great visuals and dynamic content from where we were, 10 years ago with educating executives. Really top. The other one, a simple puzzle exercise goes miles. And that's something else, Robin, that we should probably get some template for how people can get their AWP puzzles, but it's like one with work packages, one with not. And what's interesting is it like comes up with similar productivity improvements and time savings, where it's like the team with the puzzle that's packaged just goes to it, which really goes back to the question. You can be 300% done with engineering, and packaging still has phenomenal value because the people in the field aren't trying to sort through drawings and materials. You're queuing them up to do the work. Otherwise, you're dropping a puzzle on them and say, figure it out. I mean, it's just, engineering data is complex. Drawings are complex. We're not, AWP doesn't remove the complexity of these incredible, complex plants and facilities that we're building, or a building. I mean, AWP is not limited to oil and gas. I mean, wherever that came from, I was like consultants saying, don't tread on my space. AWP applies everywhere. Just like Robin said, the basic concept applies to, planning a wedding. It's like having the detail broken down makes the people doing the work so much more efficient and just getting to it. So, it sounds but I mean, sitting there, and it takes, 10 minutes to do the puzzle. And the people without the plans probably won't even finish. Sometimes they struggle, and you'll see them really trying to struggle, but it just makes it like, wow, here's the way we should be executing the work. Here's the way we're doing it today. The lights turn on.
Yeah, excellent, Ted. So in our program on the AWPU website is that session that Ted was mentioning. It's free of charge. Send all your executives the link. It'll help you if you're trying to sell AWP up the food chain, to lead the way for you to have that conversation so that you don't have to do all the explanations. It's a really quick 45-minute video that takes them through the basics. It's an excellent tool for running it up the flagpole, if you will. The other thing is, Ted mentioned the puzzle exercise. We have examples of that puzzle exercise within 001 AWP for Fundamentals Level 1 certificate. However, we just brought in a bunch of new tools, and stay tuned because I've been researching myself personally on how to turn the puzzle exercise into a digital exercise online. I'm about to turn that over, so they don't know it, but they're about to hear it now, to our Masters of Education, Krista and Tara, who are the ones that put this stuff together. So stay tuned. We're going to see the digital puzzle exercise released to the masses here quickly on our new curriculum that's releasing here right away. So thanks for mentioning that, Ted. All right, so next question. So what do you do when there's an issue in working in IWP and it will prevent you from completing that IWP for multiple weeks? Good basic question.
Yeah, I mean, it goes right to the heart of why we're doing IWPs. You replan, right? Yeah. I mean, it's like the whole thing of planning, and you should have some backup. Ideally, you have a backup IWP that it's already ready to go. If you've got the laydown area material, and even if you don't have the laydown area, you should have the IWP ready to get the materials out, where it's like the crews can shift to something that's not constrained, because one IWP may depend upon that IWP, so have something that doesn't depend upon that localized sequence ready to go where a crew can shift during the week on. But then at that point, the answer really becomes you got to analyze what the situation is and replan. And it may be, remove the scope that's not able to be completed and repackage it. Or it may be, hey, I'm just going to put it on hold for 2 weeks and complete it. But it really goes down to the heart of why we're doing this, because you don't build a plan and say, I'm exactly doing it this way. You're iterative replanning on a weekly basis and just getting my planning front, so that my reliability of my plan goes, And by finding if I can't do something 8 weeks from now, then I can start making work requests to say, get that material ready, get those drawings ready for 8 weeks from now. So I'm not waiting till I'm 2 weeks out, suddenly realizing I don't have what I need.
Excellent. So, I just think I cleared the wrong question. My bad. What is the best way to integrate P6 with the AWP process? This is a good question that's near and dear to my heart because I get it often when I'm instructing in class. Because a lot of people get hung up in WBS structures. Do we throw away our old WB structure? Do we bring in a new one? How do we modify it? What does that look like, Ted?
Thinking that project controls, even if you said project controls build this AWP schedule, it doesn't make sense. Number one, engineering is not doing work by EWPs, and procurement doesn't happen by PWPs. AI can link CWPs to the P6 schedule, and then the IWPs cascade underneath them. That was the design from the start. It got lost along the way. The CWPs aren't intended to be a one-to-one. Sometimes they are a one-to-one with the P6 activity. Sometimes one CWP multiplexes into multiple P6. Sometimes one P6 breaks down into multiple CWPs. So you get a CWP integration without having to have a company change the way they're doing schedules, and AI can analyze the schedule, marry up. That's the path of construction automation. Marry up the CWPs, or ahead of time, take my CWPs and automate a schedule from those CWPs that isn't exactly by CWP. It's the magic that WorkPax does.
Excellent answer, Ted. So with that, what would you say? Is there a requirement to restructure the WBS, or at least refine the WBS to work in an AWP environment?
No. We've now taken multiple projects, and we have taken, because many companies have historics around the way they're doing it, you can marry up AWP into existing models that weren't done for AWP and schedules that weren't done for AWP. Then you have the automation of the IWPs rolling up through the CWPs to the schedule, and you have the model automatically mapped. You get 4D for free. It's amazing capability that, through generative AI is again, it's a game changer. You got to experience it to see it, but it was something that just took that long. And we went through the iteration of saying, let's have them scheduled by CWPs and EWPs. And it was like, dude, that's not a good thing to do. Had to unwind a lot of projects. And then you get now, it doesn't mean that having some consistency in the WBS, yeah, consistency really helps, but you've got to have adaptability again. Like, not every project's going to have the same exact WBS, and getting clarification. It comes back to sharing. It's like, well, I don't even know the WBS because I'm not sharing it except outside of project controls. Few people know about it. It's kind of like, that's back to the whole thing of like, you don't want to provide the WBS. It's like, is that some hiding thing nobody can know about? I mean, it's kind of strange how it goes back to like chaos is going to make money on the chaos.
Right, and I think that is a very good point. And I think that a lot of people get caught up in that because they don't understand how to tie the CWP to those activity IDs. And they think that there needs to be an entire restructuring to the WBS, which sends project controls on their ass, pardon my language. But what ends up happening then is everybody gets in an uproar because we've now changed the entire internal structure to an organization and violated the simple philosophy that AWP is an overlay, not a replacement for our existing procedures. So thank you, Ted. I think that was a great answer. So let's look at the next one here. Both the contractor safety and quality manuals are the source for project-specific execution plans, QMS and ITPs. How do we apply this in AWP?
Fantastic question. And as we are automating work steps and our generative AI is saying, okay, I've got work steps, request for inspections. So you should not be embedding all of the inspection content into the IWPs. They can be dynamically and largely automatically linked, where certain work steps trigger inspection hold points, or at the end, inspection request. And then the IWP completion could have construction progress complete versus certified progress complete. And there's not just a done, there's a done. WorkPax, again, built to handle that. The first generation of tools didn't have that understanding. Being able to have the quality plans integrated into the IWPs without thinking that we're stuffing all the quality documentation into IWPs And that was another one of the bad. I mean, it came on projects where like, here's my IWP and it's this thick, and it's like, no, that's QA/QC documentation, but it's highly relevant in getting to mechanical completion because the IWPs don't just span the initial installation. There's now work, and it goes back to, again, subdivision of CWPs. We're having, equipment in an area being broken down into, hold on, I'm going to do the receiving and preservation, then I'm going to do the setting and hooking it up, getting it ready to hook in the pipe. Now I've got my pipe hooked in. I got to come back later and do the inspections on it. And you got to kind of phase CWPs and CWPs around specific, not a CWP per inspection on a major piece of equipment. You may have more than one CWP for inspection, so right sizing it for the equipment, but you get the CWPs lined up with your quality plans and your commissioning. As you transfer into pre-com, you now move into system-based packages. It's a key aspect of the alignment. Safety, dear and near to my heart. I mean, as you build your IWPs, that should be driving not just the IWPs themselves, clarifying review of that specific content, but I now have a technique on what are my high potential risk hazards ahead. A look ahead schedule from the IWP look ahead, what my hypo schedule is, and now I can start building a safety auditing plan to go out and get engagement on my hypo activities. What are my high risk safety activities, and embedding the IWP release plan with the safety observation plan being built for a project is just a number one. And there you don't need a lot of AI. I mean, it's just like integrate them and get them done. It's exciting. Suddenly safety has a little bit of a visibility of what they need to be.
The safest projects are one. Yeah, the safest projects are the lowest rework. So following those plans is a natural evolution into lower rework. All right, so let's look at the next question. You mentioned great projects, I think is where this comes from in your presentation. What's an example of great to you, Ted? What is a great project?
Say, call Kenny Kelly. No, but really, I mean, the AWP implementation, then Dow published in their AWP meeting at the AWP conference, I think they had an award they won that year as well. I mean, that was just phenomenal. I mean, the team there got it. They were like, look, we're not going to have engineers suddenly attribute. I mean, it was CII and the other engineers are telling us to attribute the model. They picked that up right off the spot. I was like, yeah, I don't know where that came from. And they've really honed it, right? And it's like, get the packages built and drive it in. And I'm sure they've got other statistics they haven't published yet, but the ones that they did publish, their first project that was data-driven, doing AWP the right way, achieved some of the best performance metrics that they presented at the AWP conference in 2019, right before COVID hit. Phenomenal. And they won the downstream conference award that year. Very proud. One just fantastic example of great.
Right, and they were in the 100% increases in productivity, not just 10, 20 like we strive for typically. They were in the hundreds of percents of increase. So yes, absolutely. Okay, will you be providing us your slides, Ted?
You bet. I kind of think this should become a little bit of an ongoing series, Robin, too, around like, let's get clarification on this engineering role and project controls, start hitting them a little bit one by one, and get the community to participate in. They need to wait once a year for CII to publish something. I like the idea of let's get it out there. Passionate.
We'll definitely have you back here in these speaking engagements, because the engagement's been amazing, and we've got probably about 95% of our attendance still with us, Ted. So that's great that we'll provide those. So stay tuned post delivery tomorrow, I believe it is. You will get an email from our system that will include the PDFs of both the positional slides that I presented and Ted's slides. So all of those scan codes, everything that was showed earlier, will be in a PDF for you to be able to reference and get easy access to in the near future as well when we send those out tomorrow. Interesting question. Somebody that must know you well, Ted. Have you ever considered working with NASA GAIN or other commercial space travel providers?
Oh man, that's what Jovian Ventures is all about. I'm trying to get to that point, right? Got to get one of them over the goal line. But yes, and we will be building virtually, structures on the moon here from Earth. And so getting involved in direct NASA construction activities has been my my career goal. I didn't leave NASA not to be a part of it, but also, you know, I'd be loving to really. I mean, my dream is to also be there when we get an undersea observation robot, you know, under the ice of Europa or another icy moon of Saturn or Jupiter, and see if there's any intelligent life out there. I'm not sure that's so intelligent here on Earth, given our current state of things. And me included.
Gotta be something out there, right? So what I heard in there is you'd love to be part of a rover program again.
Yeah, absolutely. But also, again, building habitats and you're actually doing work packaging for NASA's effort to get a moon base built. Man, if AWP ever applied somewhere, that's kind of what some of the original ideas came from.
Absolutely. So I'm going to bump up a question here. Is AWP less necessary if we wait until engineering is 150% completed before we start construction? Or does AWP also support that situation as well?
Yeah, I mean, the first project AWP was done on was already 100%, 150%. It was completely engineered, put on, started installation, put it on hold for 2 years, and then restarted it in an operating plant. And packaging it out again, it's like, by packaging it out, you have one team build the plans and another team execute them. But it's speeds and the efficiency gain, and it's not just, again, tool time, it's boot time. Your frontline supervision is out executing the work and supervising the work and not coming in trying to figure out what material list, and the progressing part too, getting the progress rolled in so they're not spending hours in the office trying to crunch numbers. I mean, they're good at doing work in the field. Let them do the work in the field. I mean, it's really that aspect of it. It absolutely. Then it became, well, it doesn't apply where engineering data is changing. It was like, I mean, it all kept becoming these things of like, does it not apply anywhere? And again, it goes back to like, it's not a single technique, but it's the basic idea of leveraging the smart data to build better plans before I'm in the field standing around.
I completely agree, Ted. I think one of the big things there is understanding again the processes of AWP. And based on the progress and the development and the percent complete of a project, some of the focus has changed, but not the process itself. For instance, where a process would change or on percent complete is if it's 150% complete, there's going to be an easier aspect of constraint management, because if we're that complete, constraints are going to be much, much easier to clean. So we're going to be focusing on a lot of the planning and the packages and the organization of those, where on a severely fast-track project, we're heavily constraint managed. What can I actually execute? What can I actually execute? Right? That's what we're talking about. So it's all the same philosophies, but there are different emphases based on where a project is.
Yeah, I'll emphasize a couple of quick points as well, because it wasn't just getting more boot time. It's like by building those packages virtually, we targeted, okay, 12 to 16 weeks, can't build them all at once, the project's going, get a rolling plan of the work being done, and we were refining. But coming back, we found engineering errors and omissions that then got course corrected because engineering wasn't 150% complete. It's kind of like until somebody actually goes through the process of trying to build it, you don't find out where some of the more subtle issues are. You start trying to build it virtually, and it's like, whoa, this, what would normally become an RFI from the field became, hey, let's get with engineering and get this clarified. And it wasn't even, then don't have to wait for a request for information and a hold in the field because I've got a question. It's like, well, I can't remember the number, but it was not unsubstantial. I mean, it was in the dozens of things that got ferreted out where engineering had to make clarifications and tweaks on things that they had engineered 2 years ago and thought they were done with.
Excellent.
Find that out before you're in the field.
Next question, I think you answered a little bit before with really your focus around AI being some of the, what is the next evolution for AWP? Let me turn that back on you a little differently, Ted, to twist that question. What do you think is the next evolution for you in AWP?
Having AWP and robotics brought together.
There you go. So getting into like 3D printed environments and construction, those types of things.
Not just 3D printed environments, but if you're gonna have more than just sample demonstration use of robots on a construction site, you've got to have a language to send the work activities to them.
Right.
I mean, I thought we were going to roboticize much earlier. It's taking a while. And then for a while, it was like, well, don't want to displace all the workers. No, we don't have enough work for everything we need to build. There's not enough people. I don't know who's like not figured that out yet. But, I'm in Southeast Asia right now. There's a lot of building to do.
Right.
There's a lot of jungle that people are still living in. They're like, okay, I'm not saying we can't modernize sustainably. We can modernize sustainably, and we can have robots help us.
Exactly. I think that's a very astute way to look at it. So evolution of AWP is going to be an operating system for future automation. And I think that's a great way to look at it. So with that, Ted, I've stopped the questions so that we can let you go. But we'll end
Fernando.
Yeah, we'll end with this very apt question. So, love the energy, Ted. How do we get you on a project?
Reach out to Eric and Fernando. Queue me up. I'm generally available. I pick and choose the battle wisely.
Yeah. So Eric Cravella, you're mentioning, which is your key salesperson. So remember that name, Eric Cravella. If you go into LinkedIn, he will definitely accept any requests from people, and you can hit him up there. Ted on LinkedIn, as well as he mentioned Fernando Espana, who's the president of ConstructX, who's actually our next guest next month. He will also be there. So you can also contact us at the university. We'd be happy to pass any messages along to Ted. The one thing I would say to that question to add is Ted, and I hope I'm not overstepping, but Ted's first love is really getting his hands dirty on site with projects. So when you do bring Ted into an organization, you do actually get Ted. It's not just 3 or 4 different levels of minions. Sooner or later, he'll be on your project telling you what you're doing wrong and helping you fix it, which is the aspect of bringing in an SME beyond all else. So anything you want to add to that, Ted, as to how to get you involved with other people's projects?
No, that's good. But we're scaling up. We've got a great team that also, if I'm not always the one doing it all, but yeah, we love to help. That's what we're here for.
What I would say is, of all people I know, Ted is probably one of the biggest world travelers that I know. All of his companies are global companies and provide resources across the globe. So don't worry about location. If Ted hasn't been there already, he will be. So it's one of those situations. So with that, Ted, I'm going to bring us to a close, and I'd just like to thank everybody for coming. And Ted, thank you for coming and giving us such a great, energetic presentation. I love having conversations with you about this and the evolution of AWP. We got to keep bringing you on to talk about these evolutionary aspects, because a lot of people read a document from 20 years ago and think they understand the AWP. We've come a long ways. And being part of the community is key. And thank you, Ted, for maintaining your presence within the community. All of those that have attended, please feel free to fill out the survey. It's active on your mobile devices now, or your laptop through Slido. Please let us know how we did. There's also some other questions in there about possible future guests you'd like to see, and a couple other questions. Please give us some feedback, and we will wrap it up with that. Thank you so much, Ted, for joining us here today. And thank you all for listening and being with us.
Thank you. Thank you. Great questions.
Take care.
Thank you for watching. For more information, visit our website at ccteglobal.com.